Russia's foreign minister concluded his participation at the UN General Assembly on Friday with a blistering attack on Western foreign policy. Sergey Lavrov condemned what he called the parochial, self-serving ambitions of a small group of countries and said those states are undermining the organization and its principles.
Sergey Lavrov saved all he and Russia had to say to the rest of the world for his final day in New York. The foreign minister kept himself within the boundaries of diplomatic language. However, his criticism and tone were strong enough.
A number of Western states are seeking to preserve their self-proclaimed status of global leaders and prevent a natural transition to a multipolar world order. To that end, they spare no means, including political blackmail, economic pressure and brute force. Such activities lead to devaluation of international law. The international community has paid dearly for the self-serving ambitions of these countries. Diplomacy, a culture of negotiation and compromise have been replaced by unilateral restrictions that lack UN Security Council approval. Such actions are not just illegal, but are also just ineffective.
Unlike that long, serious statement, the press conference where Sergey Lavrov covered the same global issues happened to be an event where the audience had a giggle a few times.
So there's a new policy now of land expropriation in South Africa that they are implementing. It's a parliamentary process. People could lose their farms without compensation, and there's talk that Russia is trying to take the gap, if you will, and lure some of those disgruntled farmers.
No, we're busy. Now, this time, we are busy with meddling with Catalonia elections. No time for this, you know, it's too far. But wait.
You are saying stabilize Yemen, Iraq, Syria and deter Iran. It seems as if to bring peace to these countries you have to completely eradicate Iranian influence there. How realistic is this? It's not for me to judge, but it seems to me you can't lock a country with such history, civilization and people inside its borders like in a cage.
Saying you cannot be realistic in expecting them to stay within their own borders. Why would you support such expansionism, and particularly the United States, as you know, during this session?
That's how fake news is born.
But this is what you just said. You just said
no.
Iran can't.
I said you cannot limit Iran. You cannot put Iran in its own borders and prevent Iran to exert influence outside its borders. Like Saudi Arabia exerts its influence, like Qatar exerts its influence. That's what I said.
Well, the most awaited speaker in this building and also at the UN Security Council was still President Trump. This year, his pick for the planet's greatest evil was Iran. But the rest of the world didn't fall for it, and even America's allies in Europe didn't. Sergey Lavrov pointed that out once again and said that Moscow will continue working with China and EU's major players to do everything to preserve the so-called Iran nuclear agreement. When I spoke to the person in charge of dealing with the media at the Russian Foreign Ministry, she couldn't help talking about how it only took President Trump 12 months to make a complete U-turn when it comes to his take on little rocket man Kim. According to Maria Zakharova, there's still loads of room for improvement for the U.S. administration.
For many years, North Korea was an evil, and this country, the leaders of this country and the country itself and the people of this country was mentioned as the world's hugest problem, and an evil was the word which was used to describe the country. And now, I think you heard how Mr. Trump thanked several times North Korea. So what happened to this situation? Not North Korea has changed. Nothing like that happened, but United States changed their position and their policy toward North Korea. Probably they can use the similar approach to Iran, and the things will go better.
Yeah, who knows what kind of twists and turns another year will bring about. I'm Ilya Petrenko in New York.
Well, we asked former American diplomat Jim Jatras what he thought about the remarks from Russia's foreign minister.
I noticed Mr. Lavrov tends to be very diplomatic, very polite, very gentlemanly in his expression, but I did notice a certain level of impatience today, that I think his patience has been tried one time too many. Yes, we are talking about whether or not we will continue down this road of the United States seeking in a very sterile way and destructive way to hold on to this notion of global hegemony, or whether there will be a peaceful and natural transition to a more multipolar world. So far, we don't see the people making policy in Washington willing to make that transition, and I think that is something extremely dangerous, and I think maybe that partly accounts for Mr. Lavrov's sense of impatience.